Welcome back to day 3 in the Teradek booth of NAB 2017. I'm Sarah Radel with Immersive Shooter, and we have a really great panel today. It's packed in here, but we do have a new co-host, Sarah Hill, the CEO of Story Up Studios, who's sitting on the far end of the couch way over there. So you'll see her in a minute. Robert unfortunately had to go back and teach his class. He's got responsibilities. This is our job. So here we are. Our panel today is 360. Is it going to be the new 3D TV? Is it here to stay? Is it hype? Where are we? So our panelists are, on the far end, Socrates Lozano is the National Technology Coordinator and Photojournalist for EW Scripps Company's National News Desk in Denver. He's helped coordinate coverage of large-scale news events, including the presidential inauguration, among others, while implementing new tech for the modern newsroom. Our next guest is Shelly Andigan. Shelly is the head of post-production and operations at 3D Paint Effects and has overseen the completion of nearly 20 VR projects last year alone, including pieces for the New York Times, Samsung VR, and the United Nations. And our next guest is Armando Kerwin, who is the co-founder of Milk VR and has worked for several leading VR companies, including Here Be Dragons and Facebook. And our next guest is Jason Diamond, who is a partner and director of Supersphere VR. And our last guest, is Angel Manuel Soto, who directs and supervises VR content for Riot. So let's just jump right in. I guess our first question is, what are the most common things that you guys are hearing haters say? Jason, I know we talked a little bit about this on the phone, so I'm going to let you take lead on it.
I think probably, people like to naysay stuff regardless. I think that, I don't know what haters are saying, but from my perspective, I'm interested in the apex of technology and creative. And for my nerd brain, it's all kind of, VR makes sense to me in that sense. So I'm kind of looking for the, point of entry at the end of the road to see where it's going to go. And if it goes nowhere, then I had a great time. And if it goes somewhere, then I can make even cooler stuff.
So if the haters are right, you're just along for the ride.
So it doesn't matter to me, yeah.
So Socrates, since you're sort of trying to implement new tech in the newsroom, I'm sure you get a lot of pushback because it's all about the ROI and making sure that it fits into the priorities. How are you doing that?
Yeah,
what are you hearing?
One of the main issues just in general is the workflow isn't easy. So for us in a news application, shooting and creating has to be fast, has to be streamlined, and has to be able to be shared out at a fairly rapid rate. 360 video, from a creator standpoint, is a lot slower process to handle. So a lot of people have very valid points when it comes to, like, it's dumb, it sucks, I don't understand it. Putting on a headset right now is still super clunky, but there's something organic in the mobile experience. I don't like the headset experience. I think it's cool sometimes, but I don't like it at all. I don't like the feel of it. But on the production side of it, there's something more organic of doing a 360-degree story and gathering a 360-degree story that you can't get when shooting 2D traditional video.
Like what? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, one of the comfort level of subjects. I don't know what your guys' experiences have been, but anytime I'm out getting a story, I feel like I have to work harder when I shoot a 2D story, because you have all this equipment, you have talent, you have producers sometimes, so there's a lot going on. So basically everybody that's around, they can't really relax, right? Because you have this huge camera, you have this huge crew sometimes, and so there's a lot going on. So people try to act normal, but they can't because you're just in the way. But a 360 camera, depending on the story that you're doing, you set it and forget it for the most part. So it's easier to interview people. People relax a lot sooner than they normally would, because it's kind of like a work in progress. You have to get your subjects to trust you, and I feel like they trust you a lot easier when you're shooting a VR story as opposed to a traditional 2D story.
Interesting. Angel, what do you think about that? Have you had ease like interacting with your interview subjects? Has that been difficult?
Well, at Riot, when doing with all these documentaries and all this stuff, we like to spend time with the subject a little bit before sticking it right on their faces. So when you start developing a little bit of relationship, it comes natural, like he says. I thought it was gonna be harder because you come from the concept that you need to make eye contact with the with the person that you're talking to. But I noticed that it's actually more liberating to them, as they just see it as an object that's not judging them, and they just talk to it as if it was a person, but it's very, very natural. Comes out very organic in such a way.
Sort of like the VR version of the Interatron.
Yeah.
You know.
It seems like the responses are more candid.
Yeah.
And because perhaps they feel, I mean, literally they are the only person in the room.
Yeah.
And had I known that in the fixed frame world, when we did docs and pieces in the fixed frame world, I would have never been in the room when I was interviewing him. I would have been hiding somewhere, but that was the only way that we found out to know that was.
That's the Errol Morris trick, the Interatron, where he's like, it's 30 feet away looking through mirrors, so people can eyeball the lens. But also a lot of people haven't seen a 360 camera before, so they don't even know what it is to be afraid of it. Like, it's not like a big giant camera that they see a lens looking at them. But then also, if you tell them that's somebody's face, like whoever puts on a headset, if you look at the camera, you're gonna be looking at somebody. I think that actually makes people click a little more, like they're having a conversation.
With the camera. Yeah, very cool. And Sarah, I know you have a tip, and I love your tip for interviewing subjects. Can you quickly share that with us?
Marco Polo
And your sticky notes.
We find that if we give them individuals any more than 3 questions at a time, sometimes they have difficulties remembering it. So we give them a Post-it note and we write it down. But also we found that when we're hiding in bathrooms, behind rocks, in the jungle, wherever, that you didn't know when they were finished because you couldn't always monitor that audio remotely. Sometimes you could, but sometimes you couldn't. So you would wait there, and they would just wait there standing at the camera for literally 2 minutes. So there was no indication to know when the other individual was done. So we developed a system, and we tell our interview subjects, when you're done, say Marco, and we'll yell Marco, and we'll come out and say Polo. And that indicates that you're done with the interview.
It feels less rude than I'm done. So who has heard from haters? Who is getting pushback from the people you're working with for your 360 content? Anyone? Or is everyone just in agreement?
On a daily basis? No, there's a lot of things. The medium in general is still trying to find its place, and especially when it comes to real-world journalism, it's a very hard space to navigate in general. I think until the resolution gets good enough. I remember last year, GoPro was showing off some sort of VR experience, and the way they framed it was, hey, put this on, it's going to totally blow your mind. I'm like, oh, sweet. I put it on, and I watched it, and I was super disappointed. And by the end of it, he's like, so what did you think? All excited. I'm like, well, if this was 1994, I would think that was kind of cool, but this isn't 1994, So there's a lot of work to be done that we still need to do, but the potential is there. But if I'm experiencing that as an end user, as a creator, and appreciating the art of storytelling, what is everybody else thinking from the general public? So the experience isn't there yet.
Yeah. Armando, have you found it easier to sell 360 as you've been moving forward, and there have been better experiences coming out, and more people are engaging in it as a founder of Milk VR?
Well, I work in a different part of the industry, so I work with big brands that have the budgets to do a different scale of production. So our work generally has been, whether it was at Facebook or Here Be Dragons or Milk VR, has been kind of more well received because we've had a lot more to play with. But as far as 360 is concerned, it's true that some people wonder if it's enough. And the reference is 3D televisions, or 3D movies. You could say those never caught on because they only improved movies 1% maybe or something, maybe not. But it wasn't this amazing, next level type technology. And the reason, I have 2 things to say about that. One, perhaps it wasn't enough of an innovation, but also it didn't really affect the way we told stories. So if you look at technologies that have been adopted by filmmakers, for example, editing and sound, really changed the way we told stories. And so what's crucial for VR is that we incorporate technologies that change storytelling. So 360 does have its own storytelling language a little bit, but looking to the future with interactivity, not games, but interactive video-based experiences, it might start to feel like so completely different that it's no longer a subject of debate.
Gotcha, absolutely. And Shelley, I mean, I think we're all evangelists of the industry. I think you kind of have to be when you're an early adopter of any technology. What do you say when people are like 360, VR, I don't get it, that's not going to catch on?
Well, I think all these gentlemen were speaking to the fact that a lot of people question, is this a flash in the pan type of technology? Is it like stereo, where everyone's, oh, it's a new shiny toy, and then a couple years later, it's only really theatrically applicable. Is that what's happening? I think the difference here with VR is we have not only tech being pushed by companies like Samsung and New York Times actually, who are kind of providing the public with incentive to get headsets and consume content, but we also, on the content side, have a lot more creators behind this medium that are kind of, pushing it forward. Whereas in stereo, it kind of took a really long time, and that's why consumers were kind of like, I'm not really sure I want to spend the extra money on a whole different TV when there's like 2 channels that I can actually use it for. So it's a little bit different with VR, and I think that's what we're all hoping, is that whether it's gaming or 360 content, that it will be kind of a really big splash, and that it's a new way of storytelling, like Armando said.
I think from an analytics standpoint too, there's data to show that immersive media is more engaging than fixed frame or flat media. Not only in likes and shares, we know that it's shared up to 7 times in the browser, even not in a headset, and that there's a lot of peer-to-peer sharing going on. People will pass it off to people in person, not just share online. And also, even from the brain perspective, at Story Up, we're story nerds with brain nerds, and we're looking at what these immersive media experiences do to the brain. And flat media has a different brainwave pattern than immersive media. So when you're looking for engagement, the brain doesn't lie.
Yeah, interesting.
I think I think you had an interesting point, just stuff that I think about, which is one of the reasons I think 3D didn't catch on is because it's really hard to achieve ubiquity with a single-use object like a 3D TV. That's it, really, and that's really the only thing it does, right? VR has multiple uses, like a phone can do VR and can do 40 other things, and you always have it on you, right? Your PlayStation does 40 other things, it also does VR. So there are value adds that help VR, and there's also tons of parallel development. Like, computers are going to get better regardless of VR. Phones and screens, displays and processing, they're all being developed to get faster regardless of VR, but VR could take, advantage of it to move forward faster. So I think the ubiquity is what helps it move forward, not single-use type things.
And I'm going to poke the beehive here and ask, if there was one thing that's going to prevent 360 VR content from taking off, what do you think it would be? I want some hunches. Be honest, be real. It's time to get real.
Distribution and delivery, really.
I don't know.
I mean, the headsets are the limiting factor right now.
Yeah.
But to your point, like Samsung, Google, Facebook, like these are very large companies, and they all want to sell as many headsets as possible, and it's distributed. It's not just, like you were saying, it's not just about one version of this being like the 3D. So I personally think that it's going to reach a point in the future where there are lots of people with headsets.
What's your hunch? When will that be? Look into your crystal ball.
Well, they're all taking a different approach, but like Google is doing a lot of good work right now as far as making cameras that are accessible to a lot more creators, and hopefully the next step will be to look at the other side of the market and figure out how to increase the number of headsets. And Daydream is their platform, and they launched their first headset a few months ago, but every Android phone in 2017 so far, every single one is Daydream compatible. So they're, again, going to multiple manufacturers and things like that. There are about 2 million active users right now, monthly active users with headsets, which obviously is nothing compared to what like we're used to talking about. But hopefully it'll be more of an exponential curve. You know, like there was the hype cycle and it kind of ended, and now we're entering steady growth. And the question is it going to go like this or is it going to go like that? We don't really know.
Yeah, so it's sort of baking it into what people already have before they even know that their phone is VR capable. So when they're
Right.
ready for it, they're ready for it. So talking about the need for so much content being a really big challenge in the industry, I know, Shelly, you're talking about post-production, which is one of the most frustrating parts. You've got, you're trying to fit it into an existing newsroom structure, Socrates, and then, Riot has done a wonderful job. So I'd love to hear from the three of you, like, what are the biggest challenges you're facing to build the content so that people want to buy a headset, want to watch this?
Well, part of that is you have to bring the medium to where you get the most eyes, and right now that's on broadcast. So there's kind of a disparity between broadcast because this experience is more of a digital experience, right? To immerse the audience in it, you have to post it on digital, but you want to engage with people. That avenue to do it is on broadcast. So one of the challenges that the EW Scripts company faces is how do we bridge that gap? How do we do an immersive story, create an immersive story, and then show it off within the broadcast group? And that's one of the challenges is kind of bridging that gap. So you can create and you can air an immersive story on broadcast, but the presentation of that has to be different. So that's one of the things that we're challenged with right now is trying to figure out the best way of doing it to give the audience an incentive, saying, oh, that's kind of cool, I like what I see, I'm going to go on digital and experience that. And so we're starting on a small scale, but using our broadcast platform to try to introduce a new set of audience to immersive storytelling.
That's awesome. Yeah, we pretty much flood social media with content. At first it was like, let's just get it out there so that people can see it. Sorry. Then we started finding out that the gimmick of the 360 was not enough. So now we need to focus on the storytelling aspect of it. So let's try to make it very good, very engaging, so that people will actually watch it more than 3 times, share it. So that took a little bit more time of the pre-production. But now people are getting used to the quality, so now you need to up the quality. So there you go, some limitations with the camera or parallax lines, or like a little bit more time on the stitching. So therefore, quantity shrinks a little bit, but quality goes a little bit up. So you kind of like have a balance right now. We were doing something with Google called the turnaround. We had to like release a breaking news in 48 hours, all shot with the jump. It needed to be like, we went to Haiti, shot. Like from the moment we shot in Haiti, it needed to be published in 48 hours. So we managed to do it. We did like the first one 48 hours, then you do a second bigger piece in a week. So there's like, it is possible with algorithms like the jump algorithm and all those cloud stitching helps a lot. But
and
still,
fast internet connection.
And fastest internet, yeah. No, we had to like literally fly from Haiti to Miami, try to send it from Miami. So.
And how many hours of sleep did you get within that 48 hours?
Oh,
too?
dude,
Sleep?
none.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it was kind of, the adrenaline was cool.
Yeah.
And you can do it like once a month.
Yeah. It's like a 48-hour film
It's
festival.
48.
Yeah.
That's absolutely one of the challenges. You know,
Yeah.
in the broadcast world, traditionally, you can turn a story pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so it's educating the people that we work with. Oftentimes, it's like, hey, I'm going to send you. I went to Gatlinburg after the fires devastated the town there, and my news manager says, hey, we're going to send you to Gatlinburg, and we want that story the same day. And I'm like, I could try. I was like, but realistically, I could maybe get it to you the next day. So I pulled an all-nighter. Conversion and stitching took the longest time, and then I jammed through the story, and then I exported out, and it was ready to go by 5 a.m. that day. I didn't sleep at all.
Keep in mind that 3 years ago, like when we were starting, it used to take us 5 months.
Yeah.
Actual 5 months to make a 5 to 10 minute film. The fact that you can do it in 48 hours 3 years later is completely insane. And that's because of the companies involved in driving the technology. So that's why I'm a believer, quote unquote, because they're not going to stop here. Like you're going to have 6-hour turnaround soon, and then
or real
2
time
hour,
live
or real
stitching
time,
that's as on the same quality as
it went
posted.
from 5 months to 2 days in 3 years. So where are we going to be in another year?
Yeah.
I wanted to speak to something that you all touched upon, is educating clients and just people in general who want this kind of product. That's one of the biggest challenges that we have, because people are so used to this quick news type turnaround that they don't quite understand the technology, so they don't understand the work that goes into it. And like you said, just the processing alone, just uploading the data sometimes can take days and days for just a short, like 4 or 5 minute project. So that, depending on where you are, but that to a major company, they don't quite comprehend that, and a lot of times we're trying to be forced into like a commercial type format when that's not what this is. You have basically film quality footage, that kind of output that's being requested of you, but on a more massive scale, because you're shooting with 2, 4, 8, 16, maybe even 24 cameras, depending on which camera rig you're using. So just that much data that is involved, that much work to extrapolate it and to actually stitch it together. If you're using a live stitch, that's still going to take time, to just download it. But then if you're using a team like we use at 3D Paint FX, you have artists that are perfecting the scene crossings and things like that. On projects that we've worked on together, you could see it's very different from like a news feed where you're not so much caring if some background person is kind of morphed. But of course, on something that's major, like what Armando works on, they're not only that, but they're like, this hair is a little bit off, and you're like, wait, this is a totally new medium. What do you mean? But that's what's being asked of us. So just kind of sharing that with major corporations and even smaller ones is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, we did some Fashion Week work, and the client, big brand, was like, we send them the cut, they approve it, they go, when do we get the hair and beauty pass? And we're like,
Right.
You're not getting that. You're not going to see it anyway, but no, that's not going to happen, But then in the fall, we did a piece for Volvo, and they asked us, we did both a 30-second TV spot and a 3-minute VR experience, and they wanted them to be at the same qualitative level. Well, we're shooting a TV spot on an 8K red helium, so we make a rig out of 6 8K heliums and put it on a 50-foot Super Techno in the woods, an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And then for that job, we were required to deliver a 10K stitch because we were working with Pixvana, and they want to push it out through their spin player and what have you. So, that's a lot of data,
Right.
6 512 gig mags every, 20 minutes.
Speaking of which, how are you dealing with your data? What are your solutions for that? Not only to push it when you're out in the field.
Time and a lot of hard drives.
Especially with that, like with dealing with
A lot
red,
of hard
shooting with
drives.
one camera that's red is hard enough. Now, have as many as that. That's
in the woods with
totally
generators.
crazy.
Yeah.
I'd
Well,
say magic
Shelley,
fairy dust
you've-
and praying. Like, seriously, just we
You've built proprietary ways of handling, but it's a tremendous amount of data, depending on what level of production. It's like, are we talking about news? Or are we talking about a $3 million Facebook commercial? It's different. But everything was done manually 3 years ago, and the companies have come in and built proprietary solutions. And now we're getting to, in 3 short years, to these kind of like generic solutions that are much cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So there's been an amazing trend.
And faster too, like the
And
data
faster.
management.
Yeah.
Like I was in the middle of the desert in Jordan with my laptop and a hard drive, and everything was so simple with the job algorithm, for example. So you're right.
Yeah.
2 years ago in the desert, no.
That's one of the things that's hard too, is data management. One of the things that I'm always on the road, so I'm always traveling generally. Most of the pieces that I do are edited from an airplane. So I jump on an airplane, but if that airplane doesn't have a plug, but I won't even be able to transcode my footage before the laptop dies.
But you gotta get one of those big lithium bricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there are just so many challenges, but hopefully you're seeing some things here at the show that are making your lives a lot easier. We don't have too much time, but can everybody go around and say what you're most excited to see here? What's going to make your life easier?
Self-stitching, high quality stereo camera.
Which one?
Right now, the Zcam V1 looks very promising.
Cool. We're just going to round robin, so go down the line.
I think a mixture of fast storage and fast connectivity like USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 and all that. Obviously, we have to move whatever we're shooting faster. And yeah, the same, like better stitching, faster stitching algorithms. The Mystica VR, it's like $60 a month for a subscription for a optical flow stitching on a laptop. I mean, not in the cloud. That's going to speed things up, pretty fast.
Yeah, there are a lot of good, like the Google eHalo and the Mystica and Zcam. Like, we've come so far, so there's a lot of good stuff there. I actually really liked Hype VR. This is not going to make anyone's life easier, but Hype VR did a sample shoot that was a mixture of photogrammetry and live action video. That was really cool. So that I can see something that's definitely a AAA experience, but that was one of the cooler things that I saw for sure.
I think definitely what we were touching on earlier as far as data, just having increased speeds in computers and enabling us to wrangle that data will be great. And I'm actually interested in seeing the creativity in some of the VR tech side companies, just like little things that they're working on, making titling, more seamless. Even that, something as simple as that can be more complicated in 360 because you have to worry about warping and things like that. So there's lots of little things here that are exciting.
Yeah, for me the Zcam is interesting from a quality standpoint, but internal stitching is super important for news workflow. Compression is super important. The Insta360 Pro camera that just came out is interesting to me just because it does internal stitching. You have outputs, you have a dedicated Ethernet connection, so you can do a lot with a fairly affordable camera for a lot of people. So that's kind of what I'm interested in experimenting. I haven't seen the image quality, but on paper, in theory, it sounds like a great camera. It's just a matter of it can perform as well as they say it
and
is.
which camera did you say?
The Insta360
Okay.
Pro.
Yeah.
Just right over there.
And at the startup loft, there were actually a lot of individuals who were working some things that for VR companies they could use. One was solving for compression. And I don't know if you guys saw the Firefly light, which is an LED circular light that fits around the tripod. I think it sold for like $2,500 or something like that, which who knows, you might be able to just take LED wrapper lights and wrap it around with some duct tape and call it great.
There are some productions who have already done that, actually. Wrap it right around there.
But it was fascinating that they had come up with a product for that. I also thought the footage from the Zcam V1 was very impressive. They're stereo. They shot in dark on the Las Vegas Strip with no post-prod, and the stereo was very comfortable. We work with the Zcam S1. We were in Haiti and Ecuador shooting, doesn't shut down. So it's fascinating to watch their products and see.
Yeah, we just had it in India for a week, and like all the Gear 360s were shutting down and melting, and the S1 never turned off.
So and he was saying that the heat coming off of it is a good thing because it means the heat sinks are working. And
so we shot with it in Danakil, Africa, which is the hottest place on Earth, literally, and it was fine.
Well, I think one thing that I will definitely take away is no matter where we are, you guys are always pushing 2 steps ahead, whether the industry is ready for it or not. So there's a lot of great content out there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're out of time, but stick around and let's talk. We got lots more best practices to share. So thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with Alexander Jenny from Color in a minute. welcome back. So I'm here with Alexander Jenny, who is the founder. Oh, sorry, I should have known that. Of Color, which is sort of the industry standard software for stitching, AutoPano Video Pro. And Sarah Hill is back with me, and she didn't realize she was co-hosting, so I'm going to let her take like 2 seconds to tell you about herself. Is that okay?
Sure. I use Color AutoPano products to stitch our pieces. I'm from Story Up Studios. We have an immersive media company, and we create stories that affect specific brainwave patterns. So we're into media therapy. We're story nerds and brain nerds as well.
All right, perfect. Well, we're really happy to have you both, you as host and you as guest.
Thank you.
I guess the big news is 2 things from GoPro and Color. The AutoPano Video Pro 3 coming out, and the Fusion camera.
Definitely.
So I guess my first question is an easy one. So the Fusion camera, can we expect the same stitching quality that Color has become known for in the industry from Fusion, and is it automatic?
Yes, definitely you will expect even better quality. This is the new algorithm that we are building. In fact, it's called the D-Warp, and the D-Warp will be by default using the Fusion camera. So
Interesting.
So for people who aren't familiar, describe what is the Fusion camera and how is it different from the Omni or any of the other immersive media products?
The Fusion camera, so we cannot really talk exactly about all the details, but what is there, it's a dual lens, 5.2K, 30 frames per second camera, and you should expect it's a GoPro camera, meaning it has all the features you expect from a GoPro camera to have. And it's
there
really
are very
awesome.
few details in the press release, so I'm like looking at the pictures, trying to figure out like, oh, that 2 lenses, like it's really small, it's on a helmet, like, yeah, very secret.
We won't tell anybody.
No,
Yeah,
and
this is
you learn more.
we're not live yet.
No, you you learn more during the following weeks and months, and it's really an awesome product.
Patience is in fact a virtue.
I was waiting for that product to come out since a long time. So
interesting, very cool. Well, that's exciting. And I guess the second thing is AutoPano Video Pro 3 coming out. Talk about the de-warping feature. I think we got to see it at commercial break, but I want to hear it straight from your mouth.
So definitely, when you have any type of rig, the Omni or other camera rigs, you always have the problem of having the camera. The camera doesn't see the object that are around you exactly from the same point of view, and that causes stitching artifact, which is currently the big problem with processing 360 video. It takes time to fix this small stuff. By default, AutoPano, the current version, does already a really good job, but at some point when the object is really close to the camera rigs, it's complicated. So the D-Warp is a new technology. It's a depth analysis system that allows you to really do the stitching and adaptive stitching along the seams that fix most of the stitching artifacts. So with the Omni, for example, before you have a radius that would say after 2 meters everything was great. Now it's probably more at 70 centimeter radius that everything is great. It's really awesome. And one good point here, it's not like other approaches, it's time consistent, meaning it works even if the camera has a motion traveling in the car and stuff, which is really different from the other approach that cannot handle that case.
How is that going to change things for you?
Yeah, well, I just had a question, specifically about control points. Is the workflow still the same when it comes to stitching in AutoPano with these new features? Are you still using control points and masking in order to manipulate the
in fact, it's compatible with the both systems. So you have stitching state still in AutoPano Video 3 that will say, here I'm indoor, I will make a template, and that template will be good for most of the case for indoors. And then when you go outdoors, you will create another state with new control points, stuff like that can create a new registration template for the outside. On top of that, then you can apply the warp. That will fix the remaining part of this control point. So you will need to have far less number of states along the timeline than before.
That's
perhaps
good.
One inside, one outside, and the warp does the rest.
Because if you have any movement, it's like your timeline is all these
yes,
all the
you have
dots.
really a lot of states. So we even tried just to have one state and just using the D-Warp alone. Most of the time it works, but it's better to have perhaps 1 or 2 or 3 states for let's say 10-minute video, and then the D-Warp on top of that, and it will fix the rest.
Yeah. Do you think there's ever going to be a time where it's all in one software? Right now, you have Autopana Video and you have Autopana Giga, and one is the left hand and one is the right hand, and you're going back and forth between them.
Yes.
And sometimes it opens, but if you haven't updated the other one, then it doesn't open. You need to update them.
Yeah.
So will there ever be sometime when it's just all one piece of software that they communicate?
Yeah, so that's a really good remark. It has been a hot topic at our support. In fact, the fact that we still need to have Autopano Giga to be able to edit the control point, while we are in Autopano Video, we want to stitch a video. In fact, it's just a question of the amount of resources we put on the developer part to be able to create a new control point editor and to be able to have that into AVP. That was the big problem here. It was simpler to reuse a brick that was already there in a separate software. So we don't need to do it again on the second one. So, but we definitely know that this is a problem for some of our users. So we are making what is needed to be able to have a link that is less needed, I would say.
Okay. So with this dewarping feature, the field order, first field order, third field order, does that change any of that workflow?
No.
Or does that option still exist to select between? Okay.
Yeah, it still exists, and it's a final pass on it's like when you use the output of AVP2 and you apply a new pass on that will fix automatically. It's like an NLA plugin that you can have that just do everything there. But it's integrated in a good way. You have preview, so you can already see what is going to be before you do the final rendering. It's really, really great.
Okay. Maybe talk about licenses too.
Sure.
What does the license cost, and how many machines can you put that on?
So AVP and all color software, in fact, this is really what we agree. It's a user license, meaning when you buy a license, you have a license, and you are allowed to install it on 2 computers, because many of our customers just have a desktop for high performance rendering, but also on laptop on the field to be able to prove directly on the field the footage that they just capture. So this won't change, and our upgrade policy for the people that already asked, I answer that question really a lot on our booth. It's usually it's between 30 to 40% of the initial price to upgrade to a new major release. AVP3 is a new major release. Time frame, before you ask the question, is around July, and the alpha version that you can try with your current 2.x key. You can try it and do some work already. It's in 2 weeks from now.
And I do have a question about stitching in general. So we just had this panel and everybody's talking about the changes and the improvements in stitching. And on the high end, you've got cloud stitching, and on the lower end to mid end, you've got automatic stitching. So how is color going to fit into the future where the stitching jobs are getting narrower and narrower?
Yeah, true. At 10 years from now, we won't have stitching anymore. We won't talk about that subject anymore, because it will be either in the camera, so new SoCs, so new GPUs directly in the camera, or it will be completely cloud somewhere else hardware. So I'm waiting for that. Until that, there's still a lot to be done right now to be able to just stitch the footage that we have from any type of shape of camera. And this is really the goal with Autopano Video. It's a generic stitcher, any camera, any layout.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I don't think there's any question that you guys are leading that market, so I'm sure that you will have a strong future. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah.
We are out of time, but we'll be back in a few minutes with Thomas Wallner from Liquid Cinema. See you then.
See you.
Welcome back. Our next guest is Thomas Wallner from Liquid Cinema, and I'm not going to lie, I saw something really cool at your booth, and I just want to start off with that. Can we get that tape cued for the transitions video? While they're doing that, you want to tell us a little bit about it? Give us some background on that feature?
Absolutely, yeah. So will I be able to see it? And then
you will be able to see it in a second, but if you want to get started
cheating.
talking
If
about
you get to see it, it's cheating.
We like to make things easy.
Well, what you're going to see represents the ability of this interactive 360 video platform to actually combine traditional film and 360 seamlessly in one timeline. And that's really because I think of this medium as a language that isn't solely restricted to just showing 360. So let's have a look at that. That's actually a story about the north and climate change. Now watch this, we're going through the window seamlessly into a 360 on one timeline.
That is so cool.
And
That is so cool.
And this authoring tool actually makes it really easy to author those kind of transitions.
Yeah. And so how do you see this sort of being published, being used in the industry?
Well, right now we're business to business, so our clients are large broadcasters, like a lot of the German public broadcasters have licensed this platform. But what we're looking into now is finding a way to roll it out to the creatives, the people that we ultimately built this for, in a way that's affordable. So while I don't want to say anything concretely just yet, but there will be some stuff coming up later this year.
Very cool. So for people who aren't familiar with Liquid Cinema, I talk about it all the time when we are talking about VR because it's such a crucial tool as far as attention. Talk about what motivated you as a storyteller, your background is as a storyteller, in order to create this software and what it does for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, we did this sprawling giant project called the Polar Sea. And some of those scenes were from the Polar Sea, where I was tasked to make an immersive film in the Arctic. And in those days, everything was like a completely uncharted territory, from the shooting to the how would you cut and stitch this, and then ultimately, how would you tell a story with this? And then, coming from a traditional film background, about the power of traditional film. Traditional film is incredibly powerful. And what I saw is that this medium is very immersive, but not so powerful in terms of being able to tell a story. It is powerful to tell stories in it, but they are different, and there's some formidable hurdles. For instance, you don't have a frame. And that really bothered me, that, between cuts, when you come into a new scene, that it could be quite random of where the viewer is looking, and as a director, you're aghast. That's like having a drunken camera person.
That's a great analogy, a drunken camera, you're absolutely right.
It's like
That's
the drunken
true.
camera
it's moving
person, right?
and
So we wanted to find a method that would absolutely preserve the freedom of a viewer to look anywhere they wanted, but we used the cut into newest shot to programmatically move the sphere to show them in the new shot to come in at the point that the director or the editor wanted them to see. And so I'd like to say, and I think this is literally true, that we've brought the frame back into this medium. We call it forced perspective, call it whatever you want, but we brought the frame back. And I think it's a fundamental change that will change how this medium gets used in story. I mean, we have things where we actually have matching action cuts now that were just not possible to do before. And that means storytellers can actually concentrate on what's in the story rather than thinking, I'll have a person walking through the frame to guide you to this scene.
Right.
You're spending
people
more
looking in the scene at
exactly.
where they're looking, so they'll look in that way.
Building elaborate sound, which I think they still should do. All of this will work in concert together. But then you don't have to worry about this anymore. You just show your scene and you get to it, and it takes care of that.
So let's talk about CGs and lower thirds, because the old school way to do it is to bake him in all the way around the sphere on a cube face, which obviously it looks janky, for lack of a better word. If you look around, you're seeing that you've got the lower thirds around them, but you solved for that.
Yes,
tell
because
people how you do that.
And burning it in has a couple of major drawbacks. One is it's in the film, so if you make a mistake, it's really laborious to change it. The second is, this is a spherical medium that reacts to the gaze of the viewer. So the standard practice of burning it in 4 places, hoping somebody will pick up one of these 4, I think is a very bad practice. So what we have is we actually live render the graphical layer on top of the video at the time of playback, and it's gaze-based. So it means if a viewer is looking at a certain character, then the graphic is shown. If they're too late in looking, it might not even be shown. It's a very intelligent system. And because it's metadata driven, it also means that you can publish in 11, 12 different languages. It's the same video, but you'll have graphical overlays in 12 different languages. And the authoring tool of Liquid Cinema now has a completely multilingual workflow. So you can juggle 3 videos at the same time in 3 languages while authoring the graphical layer for 11 different languages. And you can customize it in like minutes for each platform, how these graphics works. If you didn't have that, you'd need 21 versions of the same film. So it really solves a huge problem. So basically it creates a better experience for the viewer, and it creates a better experience for somebody wanting to distribute this their work basically across languages and territories. So I think we solved a whole bunch of things at the same
And
time.
I mean, I think that we have probably 1,000 more questions. I know I have a bunch. Unfortunately,
too.
we are out of time. I wish we had more time, but I do encourage you, everyone, to go to Thomas's booth if you're here and ask him questions, because it is really amazing to watch what they have there. Just so cool. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
And go to liquidcinemavr.com.
All right,
Yes,
and it's
and-
publicly available.
It is,
correct?
yeah. You can download a
it
beta
now.
version and play with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.